Well, thank you. Lifted hands. Travis, do you need him center stage? Yeah? Okay. We're going to move you over here. Do you have papers or no papers? No papers. No papers. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm just going to move this all the way out of the way then. I totally forgot to find somebody to introduce Sir Mike. I was banking on Chris Mamongate doing it, but Chris isn't here tonight. Oh, he's not feeling good. So I figured I'd just do it real quick. I don't even know you, Mike. We're Facebook friends. That's about the gist I know of Mike. But even just from social media, I see the way Mike operates in his church. I see what he does for this community, and just on what I see from your social media world, you're my friend, and I like what I see. So I don't know what else to say. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Pastor Mike.
Okay, so this is going to be a little different. A lot of people who do these testimonies give testimony about having come through a difficult life with addiction. That's not my case. When I was younger, I did mess around with some drugs and alcohol a little bit, but I was never what I would call addicted to it. I think I was a little too fearful of it to actually get that far as that goes. I've dealt with addiction to food, so that's probably legit in a way. But the reason I'm really here tonight is because I'm here to testify to the power of God and what God can do in your life. Because something happened to me this year. I mean, I always believed in miracles, and I'd heard of other people getting miracles, but something happened to me this year that made me realize it's no joke. God still does miracles. And that's the thing I really want to tell you about tonight, because if you're somebody who's thinking to yourself, it would take a miracle for me to get straightened out. Well, I wholeheartedly believe that God can and will do that if you open yourself up to Him. Because I've seen God work. And I'm going to need a little help tonight to tell you this story, because I didn't really experience 2 weeks of my life this year. And my wife's going to tell you a little bit about what happened during that time. And then we're going to bring it around to something else that is going to be very relevant to what a lot of you are dealing with.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
So it was almost a year ago. It was on January 26th of 2025, the beginning of our really hard year. So I got sick, and it was our church's annual meeting. And so I got sick the day of the annual meeting. Mike got sick the next day. All of our friends had been getting influenza A, and all the crud was going around, so we just figured it was the crud, and we get over it and get past it.
Can I ask a quick question here? Part of what you're going to learn about me is that I have some mobility issues still. So standing for a long time is a bit of an issue for me. Is there a stool perhaps or something that could be brought up here? That'll work.
So anyway, that week, we kind of got better, and we even met with somebody at Village Inn on that Thursday. And then Friday, I started to feel a bit better. So Mike was not getting better, though. And so I told him, I said, I really think you need to go in. And he's like, oh, no. He goes, you got better on Friday, so I'll get better on Saturday. Well, Saturday came and he wasn't getting any better. He's like, no, I think I'm turning a corner. Tomorrow I'm going to turn a corner. So Sunday we canceled church because a lot of our church members were sick and it was really cold. So he's like, Monday he was not any better. And he's like, I'm turning a corner. I just feel it. So Mike's one of his favorite things is something that I made up. It's almond milk and cocoa and artificial sweetener and chunky peanut butter. Well, he asked me to change the chunky creamy to creamy. And I knew at that point we were in real big trouble, because if he was asking for creamy peanut butter, we were in hurt. So he didn't even eat it. And I was like, you are going to the doctor, whether you want to or not, tomorrow. He's like, fine. So I made an appointment for Wednesday. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday morning, I got a text from him because he'd been sleeping in our other room. And the text just said, help me.
Just the reason I was sleeping in the other room is because I was coughing so bad that I didn't want to keep her awake at night. So I went to sleep in the other room. Yeah.
So I got up and I'm like, you're going now. Am I taking you, or do you want me to call an ambulance? He's like, no, you can take me. And I said, then you got to get up and you got to help me get you ready. So we got up, got ready. That was a whole ordeal. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. The snow plow had gone by, so I'm out shoveling in 14 below weather, and it was just awful. So I said, are we going to Virginia or Aurora? He said, Aurora. I said, fine. We got him in the car, got to Aurora, got him checked in. So he walked in, he walked into the front desk. We got him back into a room. And the security guard came by and he said, are you the one parked out by the entrance? I said, yeah. He goes, you're going to have to move your vehicle. And I said, oh, that's fine. I'll go move it. So I was gone approximately a minute. When I got back, the nurse said his pulse ox was really low. Okay, so pulse ox is how much oxygen circulating free in your blood for you to use. It's supposed to be 95 or above for a healthy person. Mike's was at 67. The doctor came in and he goes, how is he sitting up and talking? At 64, you go into cardiac arrest. So his lungs were not taking in oxygen. So he's like, he's going to Duluth. And I'm like, okay. So then they did all kinds of tests. They did x-rays, all that stuff. He had pneumonia. Okay, so we got pneumonia. He's going to Duluth. All right, we're good. He's like, do you think you can get me something to eat? And I'm like, you have not eaten for like 4 days. You are going to Duluth. I don't think they're going to feed you breakfast. So they did give him some ice chips, but that was just kind of trying to tell you where his mind was at. He's like, kind of hungry now.
I don't know where my mind was at because I don't remember.
He doesn't remember any of this. He doesn't remember from Thursday on. So they got him ready, and I'll be honest with you, things are kind of a blur. So I can't exactly anymore remember exactly when we found out exactly what he had. But somewhere between Aurora, them taking him to on the ambulance to Duluth, and him getting to Duluth before me, because they made it in like 35 minutes. I mean, they flew. And then I got there at noon, and I met a doctor by the name of Dr. Bhupal. And Dr. Bhupal said, yeah, he came in. We tried him on something called a BiPAP. It didn't work. So I asked Mike if we could intubate him, and he's intubated now. And I'm like, okay, all right. So there were literally 20 people in his room putting in IVs and putting on all these different monitors and all this other stuff. And his pulse ox dropped even lower. So all of a sudden he's like, clear out the room. And like, I'm not kidding you. I had to leave. There's these 20 people. They have to flip him over onto his stomach. And he's got probably 9 ports in him by that time. So they assign each person to a port and each person to a limb to try and flip him over so he can breathe. That's a little intimidating to see. So anyway, they shooed me out of the room. They said, we'll come back and get you when he's stable. This was 2 o'clock. 5:30, they still hadn't come and got me. And so finally, about, I think it was around 6 p.m., they came and got me, and they said he's very, very sick. He had gone septic, so that means the infection in his body had gone into his blood. His pulse ox was sitting at roughly 65%. They had him intubated. They have the respirator breathing for him. He was at the maximum setting for every setting that he could be on. His oxygen was high as it could go. The pressure they were using to push air into his body was as high as it could go. The doctor looked at me and he goes, we don't have anywhere to go. They said, if one more thing happens, we're not sure what we would do. So I called everybody, said, we really need to pray because this is not going well. I found out then somewhere in that time frame, he had something called Staphylococcus aureus. That's a bacteria infection. And he had, worse yet, something called blastomycosis, which is a fungal infection. So his body was fighting off a fungus as well as a bacteria. And when the doctor came in, he said his chest x-ray looked like his lungs were cheesecloth and had actual holes, physical holes in his lungs. And so Dr. Bhupal went off service, Dr. Haig came on, and Dr. Haig I recognized. Because in 2019, believe it or not, my sister went through this same thing. She didn't have blasto, but she had other things and almost died. And Dr. Bhupal and Dr. Haig saved her life. So I thought, well, God, if we're going to go through this, I'm glad to know you did it once. So, okay, here we go. So Dr. Haig looked at me and he goes, do you want me to be nice or do you want me to tell you the truth? And I'm like, I want you to tell me the truth. He goes, I'm not sure he's going to make it through the night. He is very, very sick. And he goes, we've got nothing else to give him. He said, if one more thing happens, we're done. So the next morning, after all this night, they have him on his stomach because, believe it or not, it's easier for you to breathe when you're on your stomach. They can't flip him over because every time they go to move him, he stops breathing. So the doctor comes in to me. Dr. Bhupal's back on service. And he's like, yeah, his kidneys took a hit and his liver took a hit and now his kidneys have shut down. So he said the only choice we have is to put him on dialysis. Okay, he just had his 56th birthday. This was not a thing that I thought I was going to have to be signing, was to save his life by putting him on dialysis. So they kept assuring me that they would eventually get better. Like if he survived, his kidneys would get better, but he had to survive first. So I looked at Dr. Bhupal and I said, do I need to call my children? And he says, he's a very, very sick man. And I said, no, Dr. Bhupal, do I need to call my children? And he's like, you need to call your children. So we did. We called the kids. Believe it or not, they all came. Even our daughter, who's been estranged from us for years, came. That's another whole story. But she did show up. But it was tough. It was a tough, probably 5 or 6 days, I want to say, where they kept telling me they weren't sure if he was going to make it. And finally, something turned the corner. They were able to turn down one setting on his respirator. One setting. And Dr. Bhupal said, this is the most optimistic I've been since this whole thing started. So around that time, they shut off all the sedation. Well, what I didn't know, because I wasn't, my sister's progress was a little bit different than his. But when they shut the sedation off, it took him 5 days to wake up because there's so much medication in your body that it takes that long for it to come out. So every day, waiting for him, like, he's not on any meds. Where's he at? Where he's at? So 15 days from the day he was intubated until he woke up. So he was still intubated when he woke up. So they have to strap you down to make sure you don't pull out the tube, because that would probably not be a good thing. And so he was trying to tell us things. Well, he can't talk to us. And the other thing that when you're intubated for 15 days is you lose all muscle. So he couldn't lift his hands. So he couldn't write. And we tried to get him to point to an alphabet, but he wasn't real accurate. But he kept going. And I was like, don't know what that is. We figured it out after 2 hours. He wanted to shave. I'm like, you have been intubated for 15 days, and the thing that's bugging you the most is you want to shave. Okay. Well, then they were worried about shaving him because he had gotten a pulmonary embolism during this time, blood clot in his lung. So he was on massive blood thinners. So they're like, probably shaving's not a real good thing. So we did find an electric razor, and I think they did shave him. But anyway.
Well, I'll tell you about some of the things I experienced as I started to wake up. For one thing, I woke up and I was still intubated. So I couldn't talk. That was very frustrating. Obviously, having been sedated for 2 weeks, I lost all my mobility. The only thing I could lift my hands just a little bit and wiggle my feet. That was about it. That's all I could do. Couldn't roll over, couldn't get out of bed, nothing like that. And if you ever want to experience a practice of personal indignity, try being immobile for a while. I suddenly, realized what it's like for somebody who's quadriplegic. It's the amount of care involved in taking care of them. But one of the things I remember, there were nurses with me all the time, and they'd constantly be checking things on me because there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened to me. It wasn't just the double pneumonia, which was both bacterial and fungal. It was also that my kidneys shut down. It was also that I had an embolism in my lung. All these different things happened. And then
he clotted the dialysis machine 9 times.
Yeah. And but I remember one day, they'd listen to my lungs a lot, obviously. And I remember one day a nurse came in. This was the morning, and she said to the other nurse, "His lung sounds are like 80% better than they were yesterday." And she was just shocked. She'd never seen anything like that. And so that was the first sign to me. I was like, I couldn't talk at the time because I was still intubated, but I thought, well, that sounds like good news, But gradually things started to come. The kidneys started to improve, but I had to be on dialysis for a while, even after I was done being intubated and all that. It took a while for them to come back. And another blessing was that they came back just in time because I wanted to be transferred up to Aurora so I could be closer to my family. And But in order for me to get transferred to Aurora for the opening that they had, my kidneys had to improve to the point that I didn't need dialysis anymore within 2 days. And they did.
And I
Yeah.
just have to add this
Yeah.
because the first pee that came out, and I'm sorry, this is probably TMI, but it looked like coffee. And even the nephrologist goes, "What is that?" And we're like, but it worked because now his kidneys function better than before he got sick.
That's true. They do. Yeah. So, and then the thing that took the longest was getting my mobility back, and I still struggle a little bit. I still, my left leg doesn't work as well as everything else, so I have some struggles with that. And and if you happen to be here back in June, my band that Chris and I are in, called Old Man Down, we played here. And this was a month after I got out of the hospital, because I was in the hospital for 3 months. And I had to be helped up onto the stage and, sit down the whole time because I just didn't have a whole lot of mobility yet. But the really amazing part about all this is that I have had no less than 5 doctors who looked at my case and told me, "You're a miracle. It's an absolute miracle that you got through this."
When you can stump the modern
Yeah.
medical profession into thinking you're a miracle, I think you're a miracle.
Yeah.
But I think what part of our story in all of this is, this was definitely a miracle. God saved his life, but it was hard work.
Yeah.
He didn't jump out of bed and go,
No.
"Woohoo, I'm saved." It took weeks, and to complicate this, he got something also called a pressure sore or a bed sore that he had to have surgery on. He's still actually getting daily dressing changes for that. It's still not healed a year later. So there was other complications as well.
Yeah. Yeah, on February 5th, it'll be 1 year since
1 year.
all this started. And so I was really, I had my birthday on the 8th, and I was really happy to see my 57th birthday because odds were against it.
But Dr. Welch was the immunologist, the infectious disease doctor, and he's the one especially. He came and he saw us every time Mike would go to the wound care clinic, and Dr. Welch came in and he goes, "Your lungs on X-ray now look completely normal. There is no scar tissue. There is nothing there except healthy, normal lungs."
So, and that's nothing I did. That was total grace to me from God. There was nothing special about me. But, the one thing I will say, I guess, is that, and this doesn't say that I deserved it, but I've always tried to follow Jesus since I was 16 years old. That's been my heart to do that. And so I'm not saying that's why God saved my life necessarily, but I'm very thankful that it worked out that way, obviously. But the thing that ties this kind of to the fight that some of you may be in is that we began our year with this miracle, and then we ended our year with something very different, and I'll let you talk about that.
So my sister that got sick in 2019 had the same thing as Mike. Very similar path. Ended up fighting back, winning her battle. That year, her youngest son was graduating from high school, and that was her motivation to get out of the hospital, was because she wanted to be there for his graduation. Unfortunately, at the end of this last year, he lost his battle. He took a dose of cocaine that was laced with fentanyl and died immediately in her bathroom. And when I found that out, the first thing I thought about was CR, because I've never had that battle. But I thought, you are all a miracle. And your miracle may look like Mike's. It may be really hard. And you might have to fight for it every day. But I want you to know that you are a miracle. And God will walk you through whatever steps you have to go through, just like he did Mike. And maybe it's learning to walk a different way all over again. Maybe it's learning how to lift up your arm and shave yourself again. But don't give up, because that miracle is yours, and it may be work, but that doesn't make it any less of a miracle.
And I'll add this. Our nephew struggled with drug addiction for years. And, you know, he had his times where he was doing really well. And in fact, just shortly before his passing, we thought he was on one of those
Really well.
doing well. But the night he died, his mom asked him if he needed to go back to treatment. And he said, you know, I'll have to think about that and get back to you. And that night he took that lethal hit of coke. And so, you know, no matter how hard the struggle, you know, that's the one thing we all tried so hard to get him to lean into God, you know, and it's not that we don't, I mean, we know he had faith, but still the drugs just, I don't know. Drug addiction's a really powerful thing. And so I guess that's just what I'm thinking, you know, is lean into God harder, you know, because the drugs, the alcohol, whatever you're dealing with, it's hard. So lean into God harder. I guess that's all I got.
That's all we got.
Yeah.